Chosen one, God showed your soulmate something last night. They can't forget you now, sparkles. God says, my child, listen closely, because last night touched their heart deeply. They were not prepared for what rose before them. The room was quiet. The lights were low. Rain tapped softly against the glass beside them. Their phone rested face down near an open Bible. They had tried to sleep, yet your presence kept returning. Not as a passing thought. Not as a weak memory. Something deeper moved inside them. My child, what they saw did not create love from nothing. It uncovered what fear had buried. It revealed what pride had kept hidden. It brought your name back with unusual clarity. They closed their eyes, but your face remained. They opened them again, and the feeling stayed. That moment changed something. You who are listening, do not rush past these words. What happened last night was quiet, but it carried weight. Their heart finally faced what their mind had avoided. If this message speaks gently to your heart, comment Amen. Let it be an act of faith, not fear. I am already working where you cannot yet see. My beloved child, they had spent many days trying to explain you away. They called the connection confusing. They blamed the timing. They told themselves distance was safer than truth. Yet each excuse became weaker when silence filled the room. Last night, they reached for their phone without thinking. Their thumb moved toward your name. Then it stopped. Their hand began trembling. A memory opened before them with perfect detail. They remembered the way you listened without trying to fix them. They remembered your calm voice during their hardest moment. They remembered how your eyes carried kindness, even when you felt hurt. That memory would not leave. It felt different now. What once seemed small suddenly felt sacred. They understood that your love had never demanded a performance. You had seen the tired places inside them. You had noticed the pain behind their smile. They feared that kind of closeness. Now they feared losing it more. My child, the image they received last night was not merely your face. It was the truth of how safe their soul once felt near you. That truth stayed awake after the room became still. My child, listen carefully, because the next moment reached even deeper. A soft worship song began playing from another room. They had heard it many times before. Yet one line entered their heart differently. It reminded them that love cannot grow where honesty is refused. Their breathing became heavy. They sat at the edge of the bed. The floor felt cold beneath their feet. Beside them rested an old photograph they had not touched for months. They picked it up slowly. There you were. Your smile looked peaceful. Their eyes filled before they could stop the tears. They whispered, "Why do I still feel them so strongly?" No one answered aloud. Still, the silence became clear. They had not forgotten you because their heart never truly released you. They had only placed fear above love. They had hidden behind delay. They had called avoidance wisdom. Last night, that cover broke. They saw the pain they caused. They also saw the pain they carried. For the first time, they understood that running from you had never brought peace. It only made your absence louder. The truth became impossible to ignore. My beloved child, the separation had a purpose, but it was never meant to destroy you. It exposed what needed healing. You were learning not to abandon yourself for love. They were learning not to reject love because of fear. You were being taught patience without losing your worth. They were being taught courage without hiding behind silence. I was not wasting the waiting. I was shaping both hearts. During the lonely nights, I saw your tears. During their quiet mornings, I saw their regret. Nothing was hidden from me. Still, I did not force what needed to mature. Love without growth would have repeated the same wounds. So I allowed distance to reveal the truth. My child, last night they finally recognized that the distance did not erase your place. It showed them its depth. They remembered every unsent message. They remembered every apology they almost offered. They remembered each time they opened your profile, then closed it quickly. Their actions said they were moving forward. Their heart said otherwise. They cannot forget you now because forgetting would require denying what they finally understand. You who are listening, there was another detail you must hear. Near midnight, their phone lit the dark room. It was not a message from you. It was a simple notification with the number 777. They looked at it longer than expected. The number did not control their future. It simply made them pause. In that pause, they prayed. Their voice was low. Their words were honest. They said, "God, remove this feeling if it is only fear." Then silence settled again. Yet the feeling did not leave. Instead, their heart softened. They stopped asking to forget you. They began asking how to become honest. That was the change. They did not ask for an easy answer. They asked for courage. My child, this matters because courage begins before contact. It begins when a person stops hiding from themselves. Last night, they saw that contacting you without change would not be enough. Words alone could not restore trust. They would need humility. They would need patience. They would need to face what they had done. That realization did not push them away. It pulled them closer to truth. My child, they walked toward the window as morning approached. The rain had slowed. Pale light began touching the street below. They held the curtain with one hand. Their other hand pressed against their heart. Your name returned again. This time, they did not fight it. They whispered it softly. The sound brought tears, but not the same tears as before. These tears carried grief and hope together. They remembered one conversation you thought they had forgotten. You had told them, "I never needed perfection. I only needed honesty." At the time, they remained silent. Last night, those words returned with power. They finally understood. You were never asking them to become someone false. You were asking them to stop hiding. My beloved child, that memory broke through the wall they had built. They saw how often you waited for truth while they offered confusion. They saw how your patience slowly became pain. They saw the moment your heart became tired. Their regret became real. Yet regret was not the final thing moving inside them. A decision was beginning. My child, pray instead of worrying. Do not turn this message into restless searching. Do not watch every screen for proof. Do not measure my work by 1 hour of silence. Trust my timing. What happened in their heart last night must become more than emotion. It must become character. I am not preparing a brief moment. I am teaching them how to approach you with care. They are beginning to understand that love cannot return through pressure. It must return through truth. Their next step must carry respect. Their words must match their actions. Their apology must not demand immediate forgiveness. This is why I am slowing their hand, even while their heart remembers you. The feeling is strong. The lesson must become stronger. Share this message with someone who needs hope today. Remind them that silence does not always mean nothing is changing. Sometimes the deepest work happens where no applause can reach. My beloved child, before sunrise, they opened a blank message. Your name appeared at the top. They typed one sentence. Then they erased it. They typed again. Their eyes remained fixed on the screen. This was not because they had nothing to say. They had too much. Every word felt smaller than the truth. They wanted to tell you that last night changed them. They wanted to admit that they still remember your voice. They wanted to confess that distance never brought the peace they expected. Yet something stopped them from sending it. Not rejection. Not pride. They suddenly understood that one message could not carry everything. So they placed the phone down. Then they reached for the open Bible beside them. Their fingers rested on the page. Their prayer became simple. God, help me return with honesty. My child, this was the first sincere prayer they had spoken about you in a long time. And what they do after that prayer will reveal what last night truly awakened. My child, listen closely, because that prayer did not disappear into silence. It followed them into the morning. The room slowly filled with soft golden light. Their eyes remained tired, yet their heart felt strangely awake. They had not slept much. Still, they did not feel empty. Something inside them had shifted from confusion toward truth. They stood beside the bed and looked at the unsent message again. Your name remained there. So did the words they had erased. They placed the phone down and took a deep breath. This time, they did not ask how to forget you. They asked what they needed to change before reaching you. That question mattered. It showed that their heart was no longer seeking relief alone. It was beginning to seek responsibility. My beloved child, they saw that missing you was not enough. Loving you quietly was not enough. Regret without growth would only repeat the same pain. They understood this clearly. Yet there was still one truth they had not fully faced, and it was waiting inside a memory they had avoided for months. Later that morning, they opened a drawer near the window. Inside rested several things they had kept hidden. There was an old receipt from a place you visited together. There was a small note written in your handwriting. There was also a folded page they had never shown anyone. Their fingers paused over it. Then they opened it carefully. The page held words they had written after your last serious conversation. They had written about fear. They had written about love. They had admitted that losing you scared them, but being fully known scared them more. My child, those words were honest. Yet they had never shared them. They had hidden the page because it exposed too much. Last night changed that. Now the page no longer felt like protection. It felt like evidence of how long they had been running. They read every line slowly. Their eyes stopped on one sentence. They gave me peace, and I did not know how to receive it. That sentence broke them. They covered their mouth and lowered their head. For the first time, they saw that your love had not overwhelmed them. Their unhealed fear had. My child, you may wonder why they could not understand this sooner. The answer is simple, but painful. They had learned to survive by staying guarded. Before you entered their life, they had already been disappointed. Someone had promised safety, then disappeared. Someone had spoken love, then used their trust carelessly. Those wounds taught them to question every gentle thing. So when you arrived with patience, they did not know how to believe it. They watched your kindness and waited for it to change. They listened to your words and searched for hidden danger. You offered consistency. They expected betrayal. This was never your failure. It was the shadow they carried. Yet last night, they finally saw the difference between you and the pain before you. They understood that they had judged your heart through someone else's actions. That truth brought deep regret. It also brought clarity. My beloved child, they cannot forget you now because they finally separated your love from their old fear. Once that happened, your place in their heart became impossible to deny. The afternoon passed slowly. They went through familiar tasks, but everything felt different. Your memory followed them gently. It appeared in the empty chair across from them. It returned when a certain song played nearby. It moved through their mind when someone laughed the way you once did. Yet the memories did not feel random. Each one pointed toward something they had failed to value. They remembered how you checked on them after difficult days. They remembered how you noticed when their voice changed. They remembered how you prayed for them without making a display. These details had seemed ordinary before. Now they felt rare. They began seeing that love often hides inside small acts. It does not always arrive through grand promises. Sometimes it appears through patience, presence, and quiet care. My child, they finally understood what they had lost. But even more important, they began understanding what they would need to protect if another chance ever came. That realization was not comfortable. It was necessary. My beloved child, there was one moment that afternoon which reached them deeply. They passed a church while driving through town. The doors were open. Soft music drifted outside. They almost kept going. Then something inside them asked for stillness. They parked nearby and entered quietly. Only a few people were inside. Sunlight crossed the wooden floor. A small cross stood above the front wall. They chose a seat near the back. Their hands rested together. For several minutes, they said nothing. Then their shoulders began shaking. They whispered, "I hurt someone who loved me honestly." The words sounded different inside that quiet place. There was no excuse around them. There was no pride protecting them. Only truth remained. "My child, I did not meet them with shame. I met them with grace." Grace does not erase responsibility. It gives courage to face it. They began to understand that restoration starts with honest repentance. It does not start with perfect words. It starts when the heart stops defending what caused harm. They remained seated while the music continued softly. Their thoughts moved toward you again. They pictured your face during the last time you asked for clarity. They remembered the sadness in your eyes. They remembered how you tried to stay calm. They remembered the silence after they failed to answer. That moment had stayed with them, even when they pretended otherwise. Now they saw it clearly. You had not been asking for too much. You had been asking them to stand beside their feelings. They could not do it then. They were beginning to want it now. My child, this does not mean every wound has vanished. It means they have stopped pretending the wounds are not there. That is where healing becomes real. They prayed for forgiveness. They also prayed for wisdom. They asked not to return too soon. They asked not to return with empty promises. They wanted their next step to carry truth. That prayer revealed something important. Their heart was no longer focused only on being missed. It was focused on becoming safe. My child, listen carefully, because you are also being prepared. While their heart faces truth, your heart is learning peace. You have spent too many nights wondering whether you were forgotten. You searched old conversations for answers. You replayed moments that never fully made sense. You asked whether your love mattered. I saw every question. I heard every prayer. Yet I do not want your peace tied to their next action. Your worth does not rise when they return. It does not fall when they remain silent. You are already held. You are already known. Pray instead of worrying. Let my timing protect your heart. I am not asking you to chase signs. I am asking you to remain grounded in grace. Their awakening must not become your anxiety. Their growth must not become your burden. My beloved child, you can hope without losing yourself. You can care without abandoning wisdom. This is the balance I am teaching you now. That evening, they returned home with a quieter spirit. The rain had stopped. The air outside felt clean. They opened the window and allowed the cool wind inside. On the table rested the blank message they had started earlier. They picked up the phone again. This time, they did not write from panic. They did not write from loneliness. They began with honesty. I have been thinking about the ways I hurt you. They stopped and read the sentence. Their eyes filled again. Then they added another line. You deserved clarity, and I gave you silence. My child, those words were difficult because they were true. They continued slowly. They did not ask you to respond. They did not demand forgiveness. They simply named what happened. This was different from every message they had imagined before. It was not designed to pull you back quickly. It was designed to honor your pain. That change showed how deeply last night had affected them. Yet they still did not press send. My beloved child, do not mistake that pause for weakness. The pause carried wisdom. They knew that words written in emotion must survive the morning. So they saved the message. They placed the phone beside the Bible. Then they prayed again. God, show me whether this is love or only regret. The room became still. Their breathing slowed. They did not receive a loud answer. They received something quieter. A memory returned of the peace they felt when they once prayed beside you. They remembered how safe it felt to speak honestly in your presence. They remembered that you never pushed them to perform. You only asked them to be real. That memory stayed with them. It was not proof of what tomorrow would bring. It was proof of what their heart had been refusing to value. They understood that regret wanted relief, but love wanted growth. That difference became clear. My child, the deepest change was still beginning. Before sleeping, they took the folded page from the drawer. They placed it beside the unsent message. One page showed who they had been. The other showed who they wanted to become. Between them rested your name. They looked at both pages for a long time. Then they made a decision. They would not contact you until they could speak without hiding, blaming, or demanding. They would begin repairing the places inside them that once turned love into fear. This was not a promise made to impress you. No one else heard it. It was made in silence. That is why it mattered. My beloved child, last night did more than make them remember you. It made them confront themselves. And before the next morning arrives, one unexpected truth from their past will explain why your name has become the one thing their heart can no longer escape. My child, listen closely, because the truth they uncovered was not hidden inside a dream. It was hidden inside their own history. Before the sun rose again, they opened an old journal they had not touched in years. Dust rested across the cover. The pages carried faded ink and quiet memories. They slowly turned each page. Every entry reflected a different season of fear. Some pages spoke about disappointment. Others spoke about promises that were broken. Then they reached one sentence that made them stop breathing for a moment. It read, "If someone ever loves me honestly, I will probably run before they can leave me." They stared at those words without moving. Tears slipped down their face. They realized they had written them long before they ever met you. My beloved child, they finally understood that they had been following an old wound instead of listening to the truth standing before them. You never taught them to fear. You only revealed how much fear was already there. That realization humbled them. It also awakened hope they had never felt before. The morning became brighter, yet they remained seated beside the journal. Birds began singing outside the window. The fresh air carried a gentle peace through the room. They closed their eyes and remembered your laughter. They remembered the first time you encouraged them without asking for anything in return. They remembered the quiet confidence you carried. Every memory now looked different. They no longer searched those moments for hidden motives. They saw simple kindness. They saw genuine care. They saw someone who had been patient even while carrying unanswered questions. My child, this was the first time they allowed themselves to believe that your love had been sincere from the beginning. That thought filled them with both comfort and sorrow. Comfort because your heart had been real. Sorrow because they had taken so long to recognize it. Even so, grace continued working. Grace did not erase yesterday. It prepared tomorrow. My beloved child, while they reflected, another quiet truth settled inside them. They realized they had often expected you to rescue them from battles only I could heal. They had placed impossible expectations upon your shoulders. When peace did not come immediately, they stepped away instead of drawing closer to me. Last night changed that pattern. Now they understood that healing begins with surrender. It begins by allowing my love to reach the places no human relationship can fully restore. That realization brought freedom. They no longer wanted to return to you as someone asking you to carry their fears. They wanted to return as someone willing to carry honesty, humility, and responsibility. This change did not happen because they suddenly became perfect. It happened because they finally stopped pretending they were. My child, there was another moment you could never have seen. They walked outside into the cool morning air. Dew rested across the grass. The neighborhood was still quiet. They stood beneath the open sky and whispered your name once more. This time there was no panic in their voice. Only gratitude. They thanked me for allowing them to know someone whose kindness had continued living inside their heart long after the conversations became silent. They realized that some people leave memories. Others leave transformation. You had left both. That truth stayed with them as they looked toward the sunrise. The light slowly spread across the horizon, reminding them that darkness never has the final word. They smiled gently for the first time in many days. It was a small smile. Yet it carried real peace. My beloved child, while their heart continued changing, I was also strengthening yours. There were moments when you wondered if waiting had been meaningless. There were nights when unanswered prayers seemed heavier than hope itself. I heard every whispered question. I collected every quiet tear. None of them were wasted. Even when you could not see my hand, I remained near. Trust my timing. I never ask you to build your future upon uncertainty. I ask you to build it upon faith. Your peace must come from me before it comes from anyone else. That is why I continue shaping both hearts separately. The love I prepare is not meant to grow from fear. It is meant to grow from truth. And truth is becoming stronger with every passing day. As evening approached once again, they looked at the message saved on their phone. They read every line carefully. Then they placed the phone aside without frustration. They understood something new. The greatest change was not the message waiting to be sent. The greatest change was the person becoming worthy of sending it. They quietly thanked me for stopping them from acting too quickly in the past. They finally saw that waiting had protected more than it delayed. It had given their heart room to become honest. My child, that quiet understanding remained with them long after the room grew dark. And before another night came to an end, one gentle conversation with someone they never expected would reveal another piece of the truth they can no longer ignore. My child, listen carefully, because the conversation I placed before them was not loud. It happened in the simplest way. A familiar voice greeted them after a church gathering. An older believer smiled gently and asked, "Is there someone you have been carrying in your heart?" They froze for a moment. They had told no one about the night before. They had hidden every tear. Yet those words reached the place they had been trying to protect. They did not answer immediately. They simply lowered their eyes. The silence became their confession. The older believer did not press them for details. Instead, they quietly said, "When God begins healing a heart, honesty always arrives before restoration." Those words stayed with them long after the conversation ended. They walked away slowly, realizing that they could no longer pretend your place in their heart had disappeared. Something inside them had awakened, and it refused to return to sleep. My beloved child, while they drove home, they noticed familiar streets that once carried ordinary memories. Everything looked different now. The small coffee shop where you once laughed together. The quiet park where you shared hopes for the future. The church where both of you once bowed your heads during prayer. Each place reminded them that love is often built through small faithful moments rather than dramatic events. They remembered how patiently you listened. They remembered how carefully you chose your words whenever they felt overwhelmed. They remembered how you prayed for peace instead of demanding answers. Those memories no longer made them feel trapped. They made them feel grateful. They began understanding that the greatest gift you offered was not perfection. It was consistency. That realization became another step toward healing. My child, I also want you to understand something about your own heart. Do not allow another person's awakening to become the center of your peace. Let me remain there. Hope is beautiful when it rests in my hands. It becomes heavy when it rests only in human expectations. Continue living faithfully. Continue walking with grace. Continue becoming the person I am shaping you to be. If restoration comes, let it find you standing in peace instead of fear. If waiting continues for a little longer, let it deepen your trust instead of stealing your joy. I have not forgotten either of you. I am still working in places neither of you can fully see. That evening, they returned to the message saved on their phone once again. They read every sentence aloud. Some words remained. Others were quietly erased. They realized they no longer wanted to write something that sounded impressive. They wanted every line to sound true. They removed every excuse. They removed every hidden attempt to protect themselves. What remained was simple. Honest. Gentle. They looked at the screen for several moments before locking the phone again. The message was still unsent, but their heart was no longer unfinished. My beloved child, they finally understood that the greatest change was not learning they could not forget you. The greatest change was realizing they never wanted to hide from the truth again. And before the next sunrise, one final quiet reminder would confirm just how deeply your memory had become part of the person they were becoming. My child, listen closely, because the quiet change inside their heart continued growing through the night. The room was silent again. A small lamp cast a warm light across the table. Your name was still on the screen of their phone. They looked at it without fear this time. They did not feel rushed. They did not feel trapped. They simply felt honest. That honesty became the beginning of something they had avoided for far too long. They finally admitted that forgetting you had never been their deepest desire. They only wanted to escape the fear that loving someone so deeply had awakened inside them. Now they understood the difference. They closed their eyes and whispered a simple prayer. Lord, help me become the person who no longer runs from truth. Peace settled over the room. Not every question was answered. Yet their heart no longer demanded immediate answers. It wanted faithful steps instead. My beloved child, while they prayed, another memory quietly returned. It was not a dramatic moment. It was something very small. They remembered the evening you noticed they were pretending to be fine. You smiled gently and said, "You do not always have to be strong." They had laughed and changed the subject. They never admitted how deeply those words touched them. Last night those same words echoed inside their heart again. They realized you had seen their hidden pain long before they admitted it to themselves. You never tried to control them. You simply stayed patient. That patient love became impossible to forget. They placed one hand over their heart as tears slowly filled their eyes. They understood that real love had been standing beside them while they were busy hiding behind fear. The next morning arrived with calm skies. Soft sunlight entered through the curtains. The fresh air carried the sound of birds singing outside. They opened the Bible resting beside the bed. Their eyes settled on words about grace, forgiveness, and renewed hearts. They remained there for several quiet minutes. They were not searching for a sign about the future. They were searching for wisdom about themselves. That search mattered. They understood that true healing begins inside the heart before it appears in relationships. They thanked God for protecting both of you during the season of waiting. They finally saw that waiting had not been punishment. It had been preparation. My child, you were also growing during those silent days. You learned how to keep loving without losing yourself. You learned how to pray instead of forcing answers. You learned that peace does not depend on another person's choices. Those lessons were not easy. Yet they strengthened your heart in ways you could not see. Even when loneliness visited, I remained beside you. Even when hope felt distant, my presence never left. Continue trusting me. Continue walking in faith. Your value has never depended on being remembered by another person. Your value has always rested safely in my love. That truth will protect your heart in every season. Later that afternoon, they opened a small box hidden inside a closet. It held photographs, old ticket stubs, and handwritten notes. They slowly looked through every item. Each memory carried a quiet reminder of how your kindness had shaped their life. They remembered conversations that once seemed ordinary. Now they understood those moments had quietly changed them forever. They smiled through tears as they realized something unexpected. They had spent so much time trying to forget your face that they never noticed how much your character had already become part of their own growth. Your patience had taught them gentleness. Your honesty had challenged their fear. Your faith had inspired their own prayers. They could not erase those gifts because they had become part of who they were becoming. My beloved child, do not be discouraged if everything still seems quiet. Some of the deepest work I accomplish cannot be measured by one conversation or one message. Hearts often change long before words are spoken. Character grows in hidden places. Healing begins where no crowd is watching. I am still working with great care. Neither your prayers nor their prayers have been ignored. I continue leading both hearts with wisdom, not haste. When the right moment comes, it will not need to be forced. Until then, remain faithful. Remain peaceful. Keep your eyes on me, because my timing is always guided by perfect love. As evening returned, they looked once more at the message they had written for you. They read every sentence slowly. They removed another line that sounded defensive. They replaced it with simple honesty. Then they quietly set the phone aside. They wanted every future word to reflect the person they were becoming, not the person they used to be. Before falling asleep, they whispered one final prayer. Lord, if you ever allow our paths to meet again, let my heart arrive with truth instead of fear. The room became still. Peace remained. And before another dawn begins, one quiet encounter will reveal that your memory has been changing more lives than either of you ever imagined. My child, listen closely, because this is where the quiet work of grace becomes visible. The morning finally arrived without fear. There was no rush. There was no confusion. Only a calm confidence that had not been there before. Your soulmate looked at the message one final time. Every word had been tested by prayer. Every sentence had been softened by humility. They no longer wanted to prove themselves right. They only wanted to be truthful. That was the greatest miracle within their heart. Love was no longer speaking through pride. It was speaking through honesty. My beloved child, remember this forever. Waiting was never empty. Every tear you cried taught compassion. Every unanswered prayer taught trust. Every lonely night strengthened your faith. You thought nothing was changing because you could not see it. Yet I was shaping both hearts in different places at the same time. One heart learned patience. The other learned courage. One heart learned peace. The other learned honesty. What once seemed like silence became preparation. Your soulmate quietly whispered your name once more. This time, there was no fear attached to it. There was gratitude. They thanked me for allowing them to meet someone whose kindness remained even after the distance. They understood that real love cannot be built on pretending. It must stand on truth, forgiveness, and grace. They knew that if your paths ever crossed again, they wanted to meet you with a changed heart instead of familiar excuses. My child, I also speak to you. Do not allow your heart to become trapped by anxiety about tomorrow. Continue walking in faith. Continue choosing kindness. Continue trusting me even when you cannot see the next step. Peace is not found by controlling the future. Peace is found by placing the future into my hands. That is where your strength has always been. Whether restoration comes sooner or later, let it find you standing in hope instead of fear. Let it find you becoming the person I created you to be. Love grows best where grace is present. Forgiveness opens doors that bitterness never can. Healing begins when both hearts choose truth over hiding. If this message brought hope to your heart, share it with someone who needs encouragement today. Your kindness may become the answer to another person's quiet prayer. And if these words reminded you to trust God's grace, type Amen. Go forward with peace. Go forward with faith. Go forward knowing that no season of sincere prayer is ever wasted. Even when you cannot yet see the full picture, grace is still at work, hope is still alive, and love shaped by truth is always stronger than fear.